The moment I saw smoke rising from the middle of my land and heard loud music, people laughing, and what sounded like hundreds of voices, I knew something was seriously wrong. But I was not prepared for what I actually found when I drove closer. Because an entire HOA had set up a full-scale barbecue party, right in the center of my private property like it belonged to them. And what happened next is something none of them will ever forget. Before we get into this, make sure you hit like and subscribe to Karen's Stories Daily if you enjoy stories where people take things way too far and end up facing consequences they never saw coming. Because this one starts off unbelievable and only gets crazier the deeper it goes. So let me explain how this even happened, because I know it sounds insane. I own a large piece of land just outside a suburban neighborhood. It is not a farm in the traditional sense, but it is open land, fenced in certain areas, with some sections used for grazing. One of the things I keep on that land is a small herd of bison. Not a massive number, but enough that I take their care and containment seriously. They are powerful animals, and I make sure everything is secure and controlled. When I bought the land, I knew there was an HOA neighborhood nearby. It was not directly connected to my property, but it bordered one side. At first, everything was fine. We stayed out of each other's way. I respected their space, they respected mine, or at least, that is how it started. About 6 months in, I began noticing small things. Trash near the edge of my land. Footprints where there should not be any. Once, I even saw a couple walking inside the boundary like they were taking a shortcut. I did not overreact. I installed clearer signage, private property signs, no trespassing warnings. The usual for a while. That seemed to work. Then things slowly started changing. More people started showing up near the edges. Kids riding bikes close to the fence. Occasionally someone would cross over, take pictures, then leave quickly when they realized they were being watched. It was annoying, but manageable. Then one day, I got a letter. It was from the HOA. They claimed that part of my land was being informally used by residents for community activities, and suggested that I should consider cooperation for shared benefit. I remember reading that line multiple times. Informally used. Shared benefit. I had never given permission for anything like that. So I ignored it. A few weeks later, another letter came. This one was more direct. It mentioned a planned community event and suggested that my land would be a perfect location. Due to its size and open space, they did not ask. They assumed. That was the first time I felt like this might become a problem. I responded clearly. I told them my land was private, not available for public use, and definitely not for events. I thought that would settle it, but it did not. Weeks passed, and things went quiet. No more letters, no visible activity, which, looking back, should have been a warning. Because then came that day. It was a Saturday. I had been out running errands most of the morning. On my way back, I noticed something unusual from a distance. Smoke. Not just a little, a lot. And as I got closer, I started hearing music. Loud music. People talking, laughing, shouting. At first, I thought maybe something was happening nearby. But then I turned onto the road leading to my property, and that is when I saw it. Cars. Dozens of them parked along the side, some even partially blocking access. My heart dropped. I drove in further, and what I saw next honestly did not feel real. Right in the middle of my land, there were tents set up, grills running, tables everywhere, decorations, coolers, kids playing, adults drinking, music blasting. It was a full HOA barbecue event on my land, without permission, without even telling me. For a few seconds, I just sat there in disbelief, trying to process how something like this could even happen. Then I noticed something else. Some of the temporary fencing I had set up near that section had been moved, not damaged, moved deliberately. That is when the disbelief turned into anger. I got out of my truck and started walking toward the crowd. At first, people did not even notice me. They were too busy enjoying themselves, completely comfortable, like they were in a public park. Then someone spotted me. And slowly, attention started shifting. I asked the first person I saw what was going on. They casually told me it was a neighborhood BBQ. Like that explained everything. I asked who gave permission. They looked confused. Then someone pointed toward a group near one of the main tents. That is where I found him. The HOA president, standing there, relaxed, holding a drink, talking like everything was perfectly normal. I walked up and asked him directly, "What is this?" Actually smiled, and said they decided to host a community event, and that my land was the best spot for it. Decided. Just like that. I told him this was private property, and they needed to leave immediately. His expression changed slightly, but not the way I expected. He did not look concerned. He looked annoyed. He said it was just a temporary event and that I was overreacting. Overreacting. 200s of people trespassing on my land. That was the moment I realized they did not think they were doing anything wrong. They believed they were entitled to it. So I tried one more time. I told him clearly, this ends now. Everyone needs to leave. He shook his head, said it would cause unnecessary disruption, said they would clean up after, said I should just let it happen. That is when I stopped talking, because I knew at that point, words were not going to fix this. So I turned around and walked back to my truck. Not angry in the loud sense, but calm in a way that usually means something is about to happen. As I drove away from the main area, I started thinking about my options. Calling authorities would take time, arguing would go nowhere. They were not listening. And then I looked toward the far side of my land, where my bison were kept. Now let me be very clear. I did not do anything reckless. Everything I did next was controlled, intentional, and within my responsibility as the owner. But I also knew something they clearly did not. That land was not a park. It was not safe for large crowds, especially not when they ignored boundaries. I reached the secured section and checked everything carefully. The animals were calm, the fencing was intact, and there was a controlled way to guide movement without causing harm. What happened next was not chaos. It was reality setting in. Within minutes of opening access in a controlled way, the atmosphere at that BBQ changed completely. At first, people noticed movement in the distance, then confusion. Then concern. And then panic. Not violent panic, but the kind where people suddenly realize they are somewhere they should not be. Music stopped. People started gathering their things. Voices raised. Kids were called back. The entire event began to collapse within minutes. I stayed at a distance, watching, making sure nothing got out of control. And within a very short time, what had been a packed, loud, crowded event turned into people rushing to leave as quickly as possible. Cars started backing up. People leaving items behind. No more confidence. No more entitlement. Just urgency. Within half an hour, the land was empty again. Almost like nothing had happened, except for the mess they left behind. Trash, equipment, food, decorations. All of it scattered across my property. Later that evening, I received multiple messages. Some apologetic. Some defensive. And one from the HOA president. He was not smiling anymore. He demanded to know why I would endanger residents. That message alone told me everything. Even after everything, he still did not understand. So I responded simply, you were on private land without permission. The next few weeks were interesting. The HOA tried to shift the narrative at first, but they had a problem. Too many people had been there. Too many had seen what actually happened. Too many knew they had no permission. Eventually, the tone changed. They backed off completely. No more letters. No more suggestions. No more assumptions. And most importantly, no one stepped onto my land again. If you made it this far, I want to know what you think. Did they bring this on themselves, or was my response too far even if it stayed controlled? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share this with someone who has dealt with entitled neighbors like this. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure you like and subscribe to Karen's Stories Daily. Because sometimes the fastest way to clear a crowd is to remind them exactly where they are standing.